Now, joining me is Jacinta Nampijinpa Price, Senator, Liberal Senator for the Northern Territory. Great to see you, Jacinta. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm, it's coming toward the end of the year now. I'm starting to feel a little bit weary and getting prepared for that Christmas break. But otherwise, I'm all right.
Listen, you've had a huge year, Jacinta. It's been fantastic, and you definitely have a well-deserved holiday coming up. But before you do, I'm going to pick your brains on a few more things. You are the voice of Indigenous Australia, the real voice of Indigenous Australia, as far as I'm concerned, because you talk common sense and you address the real issues. Now, I just wanted to ask you about this, your take on this Mount Warning business, where the allegations are that it's now being, oh, well, if you're white, you can't walk on the sacred land, the sacred Indigenous land. If you're non-white, that's fine, but if you're white, then you can't. I just can't get my head around this. Isn't this racism?
Yeah, it absolutely is racism. It's segregation. And I wouldn't use the term reverse racism, because racism, as far as I'm concerned, is racism. You know, when you're dividing the country up along the lines of race, when you're saying some people of a certain heritage or colour skin can do one thing, but other people of a certain colour of skin or heritage can't do that, that is outright racism. And it's wrong. But you know what? It's not surprising, because that is what is being promoted in our society these days. It's what this government, the Labor government promotes. This is the road we've all been heading down and are continuing down. And it's a very dangerous road as far as I'm concerned. This is where it all begins when it comes to those who will, there's many people of Indigenous heritage making claims on land and saying that, areas are sacred and therefore shouldn't have any sort of access by other Australians. And I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. And it speaks to the broader issue of the division, which is encouraging racism in this country.
Jacinta, you've spoken, passionately, eloquently, and correctly so often about not only the voice, but all sorts of aspects of symbolism and to do with Indigenous affairs in this country. And your complaint, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but it has been, let's deal with the real issues and the symbolism can come along later. Were you surprised or intrigued or interested by the comments yesterday at a Welcome to Country ceremony where the 5 billion bridge was being opened by Andrew Twiggy Forrest, and one of the Indigenous elders made a few comments? Just have a listen.
Welcome to this lovely place that's getting destroyed. How can we build our capability? Give us the opportunity to build that capability, to mine our own country. And that didn't happen. I'm going to challenge Andrew Forrest with that capability. I want to set a meeting with you, Andrew.
So I really hope everyone heard Auntie Doris. Auntie Doris told me that she wanted to say that little story, and I was only too pleased.
So, Jacinta, Auntie Doris, what did you make of her comments?
Look, I think there are real traditional owners in this country, in places like Western Australia and certainly the Northern Territory, who want to create economic opportunities with their own country. And I agree. I think rightly so. There should be more opportunity for that to take place. And unfortunately, there are many reasons why it hinders that opportunity from taking place. I mean, obviously, Doris and Twiggy have a relationship, and that's something I guess that they should probably sort out together, because they've known each other for 40 odd years or however long it's been. But I think she makes a point which speaks to a broader issue. And I know, speaking to traditional owners, certainly in the Northern Territory, that a lot of people feel like they don't have control of their own land and their own resources, and would love to be able to have their own mines or opportunities within their own country, but are often stopped. In the Northern Territory, it's because of the Land Rights Act and often the land councils and the way in which they conduct their business, and are the overarching body that pretty much controls the purse strings. They're multi-million-dollar organisations, and they traditional owners get sort of handouts in the form of passive welfare royalties payments and no real investment in jobs, job creation, opportunities, private ventures, all of those sorts of things. And I think we need to start having real conversations about all of that. And if it's, I've never been one for the whole welcome to country thing, but perhaps Doris has used it to crack open that issue and to
Absolutely.
make those conversations heard in that regard. And I think there are better ways we can be doing things, and certainly economic development, building capacity, creating jobs is the way to do it.
And how ironic, Jacinta, that there she is, she wants to get mining going, and there's a billionaire sitting there going, oh, I'm not sure what, I'm doing a welcome to ceremony. I mean, the world is upside down and gone crazy half the time. Senator Price, I just want to go quickly to the US, where Clarence Thomas is an American jurist in the Supreme Court, which right now is in the middle of evaluating affirmative action. So this idea that universities select who comes in based on race, and they do it through all sorts of kind of unusual and underhand means, often to the detriment of Asian Americans and others. And so this has gone to the Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas has made the point, and he said it yesterday, very firmly, that this sort of pro-affirmative action, quotas and so on, pro-affirmative action, he says he heard exactly the same arguments from the pro-segregation mob. In other words, all those people saying we've got to do this and that to help black people or Indigenous people or whatever are the same arguments and the same people who decades ago were arguing for segregation. Now, apply that logic to The Voice, apply that logic to other things that you've spoken out against. Isn't this the problem, as you were saying earlier? It's not reverse racism, it's racism.
That's exactly right. And it is no surprise that the pro-affirmative action issue has been, I think, a huge issue for the US. We certainly have our own form of that here in Australia. And it does hinder the opportunity for the most marginalised to actually get forward, because what ends up happening here in Australia is those that take the opportunities, who can tick a box and say, I've got Indigenous heritage, are usually those who are already in a position of privilege and know how to take advantage of that sort of pro-affirmative action that's available. And so therefore the most marginalised, who is designed to support, in fact, end up missing out, become more marginalised. And we can't forget that in Australia, we have marginalised white kids as well. We have marginalised Australian kids of many other different backgrounds. And I've always said this, and The Voice is a huge problem, because it's about a transfer of power to those who have had the responsibility of advancing Indigenous Australians in this country, marginalised Indigenous Australians, for the last 3 decades, and who have largely failed. But they want to maintain their positions of influence and of power. And that is how they're doing it, through the voice mechanism. This idea, I think Linda Burney had said it recently in the last couple of days visiting in the pitlands, is that a lot of people in those communities don't understand what a referendum is, don't understand what it's all about. Surprise, surprise, because it's not about them. It's about the elite. And we can't continue. We're going to be having these conversations soon enough, I believe, that the US is now having with pro-affirmative action, and realising, waking up and going, actually, this is segregation. That's exactly what it is. And if we want Australia to progress, if we want our marginalised to progress, then we all have to be treated like Australian citizens, and we have to support those who are most in need, regardless of background.
Senator, always fantastic to chat to you. Listen, you deserve that Christmas holiday, and you stay well rested, because you've got a very big year ahead of you. So you make sure that you and your family have just an amazing Christmas holiday. Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price, always great to chat to you. Thank you so much for your time.